It started as a lesson, a simple classroom experiment in California, 1967. A young history teacher wanted to explain something his students couldn't understand: how the people of Nazi Germany could follow orders, turn on their neighbors, and believe it was right. When his students asked, how could anyone fall for that, he decided to show them. He told himself it would only last a few days. He called it the third wave. Ron Jones was 25, energetic, charismatic, the kind of teacher who made history feel alive. He didn't lecture from a textbook. He staged it. Day 1. Discipline. Jones began class by talking about the beauty of strength through order. He made the students sit upright, feet flat, hands behind their backs. He demanded short, precise answers. When they responded quickly and correctly, he praised them. When they hesitated, he scolded them. At first, they thought it was a joke. Then they realized he was serious. Something strange happened. The room got quieter, more focused, and the students liked it. For the first time, they felt sharp, unified, purposeful. Discipline made them feel powerful. Jones smiled. The experiment was working, but he didn't yet see how far it would go. Day 2. Community. Jones told the class that strength didn't come from individuals. It came from belonging. He invented a salute, right hand curled across the shoulder, fingers bent like a wave. It was their symbol. Only members of the third wave could use it. Students began flushing it in the hallways, in the cafeteria, in other classes. They started greeting each other with it instead of saying hello. Jones felt a chill. The symbol had spread overnight. The school, once noisy and disorganized, had fallen eerily silent. Students worked harder, followed rules. They began to see outsiders, anyone not in the third wave, as lazy, weak, different. By day 3, the third wave had a motto: strength through discipline, strength through community, strength through action. Jones wrote it on the chalkboard in bold letters. The students repeated it in unison. Their voices echoed off the walls like a pledge. They began recruiting. Jones hadn't told them to, but they did it anyway. By midweek, the movement had spread across the school. Over 200 students carried ID cards stamped with the third wave. Those cards became badges of belonging. Students started patrolling the halls, reporting anyone who mocked or disobeyed the rules. Former friends stopped speaking. A few who questioned the experiment were accused of being traitors. Some were sent to the principal's office. Others were isolated during lunch. Jones had never told them to do any of this. They were enforcing their own hierarchy. He had created a system, and it had taken on a life of its own. Day 4. Pride. The classroom now looked like a miniature regime. The students sat in rows, eyes forward, every movement synchronized. Jones entered wearing a pressed shirt and a hard expression. He spoke less, commanded more. The students obeyed instantly. He told them they were part of something bigger now, a new movement that was spreading across the nation. Other schools, other cities, all forming chapters of the third wave. He promised them they would see proof soon. They believed him. No one asked for evidence. They didn't want to break the illusion. That afternoon, several students volunteered to be guards. They stood at the classroom door, controlling who could enter. They recorded the names of students who broke rules, who doubted the movement, who asked questions. By the end of the day, they had a list of enemies. Jones realized he'd gone too far. But how do you stop something when you're the one in charge of it? That night, he lay awake, replaying every decision. What started as an experiment had become a cult of authority. He had turned teenagers into followers and himself into their leader. He decided to end it, but he couldn't just tell them it was over. He needed to break the illusion from the inside. So he planned one final lesson. Day 5, the revelation. He called an assembly in the auditorium. 200 students gathered, buzzing with excitement. Rumor had spread that they were about to meet the national leader of the third wave, that their school was part of something historic. Jones stood on stage, calm, collected, heart pounding. He told them, "Today, the leader of the third wave will reveal our national campaign. You will see our movement broadcast live across the country." The lights dimmed. A large television rolled onto the stage. The students sat at attention, saluting. The screen flickered to life, static at first, then a crackling image. But it wasn't a live broadcast. It was a film reel, footage of Adolf Hitler at a Nazi rally. Thousands of Germans saluting in perfect unison. Flags waving, crowds cheering, faces ecstatic and blind. The students stared. Some gasped. Others froze. A few stood up as if waking from a dream. When the reel ended, the room fell silent. Jones stepped forward and said, "There is no national movement. You've been a part of an experiment to show how easily people can be seduced by power, by belonging, by control. You thought you were immune to fascism, but you just lived it." No one spoke. Some cried. Some were furious. Others left without saying a word. In just 5 days, a group of ordinary high school students had built a miniature dictatorship. They had enforced rules, spied on peers, and followed orders they barely understood. And their teacher, the man who started it, was left to face what he'd created. Ron Jones ended the third wave that day, but the lesson stayed with him for life. He later admitted he was shocked not just by the students' obedience, but by his own enjoyment of their control. He realized that authority feels good until you see what it does to people. The school administration fired him shortly after. They said he'd gone too far. Maybe he had. But his experiment became one of the most haunting studies of human behavior ever conducted. Because it wasn't a study in a lab. It was real life. The third wave reminds us that fascism doesn't arrive wearing a swastika. It comes dressed as unity, as safety as pride. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It says, "We are all the same." It says, "We're better together." And before you know it, you're saluting without knowing why. Obedience feels like order. Order feels like peace. And peace feels good enough to follow. So the next time you find yourself repeating a slogan, joining a movement, or silencing someone who disagrees, ask yourself one question. Is it conviction, or is it comfort? Because the most dangerous experiments are the ones we don't realize we're still living in. This is Mind Mirror. Look closer. The truth stares back.